Or good morning to anybody who may be listening today. It seems unlikely, but occasionally people do listen, so good morning to you, whoever you are. Or somebody said that a lot of people listen, but I'm not persuaded of that. Why would you? So I've been listening to the Little Season people again. I think the fellow's name is Andy, and I listened to one of his older videos. He's the chap that did the video suggesting that Israel is actually um, in North America, and Egypt is was Florida, and Judah is Utah. They're very interesting ideas to me, but they do pose some problems, I think, because then I'm thinking, well, where did the Queen of Sheba turn up from then? How's that connected to Africa? Where did the Ethiopian eunuch pop up? Had he taken a boat and disembarked in Manhattan Island? I don't know. I mean, or was the land differently shaped um, in those days? Would it be 2,000 years ago? Maybe the continents were still linked somehow. There was a land passage. I don't know whether that's feasible. I think they've claimed it for Australia, perhaps connected. I don't remember where. I just can't completely get my head around that. But I love the idea of Israel being in North America. I think that's brilliant. But I still can't really understand it. And one of the problems with Andy and this um, Little Season podcast, and he's very good. I really don't have much in the way of criticism. Well, except I suppose that to follow his ideas, he quite often finds fault with the AV because I guess he believes that the learned men in the early 1600s, whenever they started their work, they were influenced themselves by a lie because it's this matter of a change in the date. And he, like the other one, what's her name now? Madeleine, believe that the date has been changed. And he was explicit. I mean, he proposes it. I don't think he states it as a given fact. But, when people say things, you do have to take them into consideration a little bit. So he claims that 1,000 years has been added. And you can see this in dates on mud flood buildings where it seems that the one that would be, say, 1750 is actually a J or a letter I. And so they say, well, that must be for Jesus. So those buildings were created in 1750 in the year of in the millennial reign. That's how it was, for sure. But then we have a huge problem because I'm very attached to the concept of perfection of our Bible. I think it's a very important precept And the minute you challenge anything, and you say, well, the translators didn't know, and therefore, then you've removed the Bible, you see. The whole thing falls, the whole edifice falls, because you can carry on in that vein, can't you? And the first thing that he said was that the Red Sea should really have been the Sea of Reeds, and the translators hadn't understood the word. And that's a very, very serious matter, of course. Again, if that's true, the whole Bible falls. That's the problem with it. So I don't know how to square those things up particularly. And if a thousand if 1,000 years has been removed, so 1,000 years should be added, or has been added inappropriately, so must be removed now to understand, then that would mean that we are approaching the end of the 6th millennium. No, we are about to start the 6th millennium, rather. And that to me wouldn't be great news, because 6 is the number of man. On the 6th day man was created, and that's a day of mourning, actually, because of the wickedness of man, I guess. I often think that our birthday, which we all celebrate, really should be a day of mourning, not a day of celebration. There's only one celebration, really, is the celebration of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. And we've turned away so terribly. And that's turning away. We can look back in history and see it. So, where those beautiful cathedrals and churches across the land built during the millennial reign of Christ, I think it's possible, certainly. It makes a lot of sense. And then Satan came into the world and seems to be still somewhat in charge, although his power is waning. His power is waning because we feel a great awakening, or there's just a rise in, what they call it, the level of consciousness, the New Age people. I don't mind that expression. It won't affect them because they're always completely unconscious, of course, but somebody might wake up, be awoken, be awaked. And, so if you just follow the normal thing and you say, well, okay, so there's a one, or it's not a one, it's an I, it's a J in front of these dates, and that shows that the buildings are so old. But why do people remember the Mandela effect only when it suits them, for example? I mean, if Satan is in control and has been in control for, say, 500 years, or perhaps a little bit less, and that's the master of the father of lies, then really you're just spinning your wheels to start looking at this stuff, because anything can have been done. This is a demonic spirit with the power of with an angelic power, as it were. And the angels are certainly not impotent. They can do all sorts of things. And if their end is deception, then really, how can you find them out as a man? You understand that there is deception, but to actually um, piece it together becomes very, very difficult indeed, and a very hazardous path, especially when you're having to change the Bible or doubt the Bible to plot it out. That's the problem with it. I think that's the problem that I have with this stuff. I mean, I kind of agree with it. I think the Little Season stuff is good. But I would have to put the dates. Maybe, when did Satan come into the world? Perhaps he came into the world in 1611, when our Bible was published. Perhaps that's when he snuck in. Not to say that the Bible was his work, it certainly wasn't. But thereafter, maybe God said, well, they have the word, so Satan shall be loosed. Let's see what they're made of, what stuff they're made of. And we're not made of the greatest of stuffs, I suppose. Many were found wanting, most perhaps, I don't know. These wicked churches were set up, and then we were sent to war. Wars were invented, wars with our brothers, the war with our brothers in America, with the Boers in South Africa, and with the Germans and the Italians, and all these wicked intertribal wars orchestrated by wicked men making money out of this situation. We were persuaded to fight, or at least there was a theatrical representation of war. I think, again, I'm always skeptical about the true entity of those events. But I suppose there must be a basis of it. I suppose we did go to America with our muskets and our scarlet uniforms and our bagpipes and march through the woods of Maryland, was it? I don't know. Maybe we did it 2 or 3 times for the cameras. Maybe there was true conflict between Britain and America, but maybe it was just Masonic stuff. When you look at some of those kings and leaders and their connections, it doesn't seem that they're really moved by the Spirit of God. And I think this is what must have happened in the palace, because King James, who, ordered the translation to be done, was, I have read anyway, he was a great believer. He believed that he had the divine spirit within him, and that he was divinely appointed, and he took the matter quite seriously, which I think is, I think we're all divinely appointed actually to our allotted tasks. Although, you might not be a king, of course. But thank heavens for that. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Far better to be a pauper in the palace than to occupy the throne room. It's a tremendous responsibility. But a king is a king, and a king must lead his people. And we don't have a king leading his people at the moment at all. And I quite often think that there will be a king, a human, a man will be found, will be revealed to sit upon the throne in righteousness, even before the throne is occupied by Jesus Christ. But, I could be wrong about that. Maybe Jesus Christ himself will take up the throne, but there's a great purging to be done first, because it's been taken over by secrecy and Masonic interests and people with wicked appetites for blood and death and destruction. It's a horrible thing. And the theatre is really ending at the moment, so it's a very interesting time. But if you take the timeline normally, then we are coming in to the seventh millennium, and that's the seven is the Sabbath. This is a 1,000 years of rest. So we have really, our hearts should be glad and rejoicing as we approach this time. Things are just going to get better and better. They said in church one time that things were going to get worse and worse until the Lord returns. But, you have to see how you're interpreting the news, really. Much evil is being revealed, but it was there beforehand, you see. And now there's just a general revelation happening across the land, across the world. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of it. It's just going to get better from here on. Well, that's kind of optimistic, you could say, but why not? I mean, I think the Bible does teach us to be glad in the Lord, and if we follow too much doom scrolling and everything, sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. I remember reading that. I don't know where it's written. So I'm sitting in front of my Zibro paraffin stove, and it's jolly nice. It's just nice and warm and a beautiful radiant heat, and it doesn't smell of paraffin at all, except when you light it and when you switch it off for a short period. So I recommend them if you need a little heater that's independent of the electrical grid. God bless this morning.